So Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, as we begin 2020 here, there are a few things I know. First, I finally got caught up with the rest of the world and actually finished Game of Thrones, and the ending was every bit as dreadful, cheesy, and completely disappointing as everyone said. Second, though, this year may well be the most consequential of my lifetime. Now, it's easy, of course, to feel that about every election year, but at this moment, it really does seem as if the country and the world hangs on a knife's edge. We face a climate crisis that gives us only years to act to avert the worst impacts. As I say this, of course, Australia is battling the worst wildfires that they've seen in decades, triggered by extended heat and drought. Every corner of the globe has seen mass protests and government turmoil in the past year as the hollow consumerism, massive inequality, and dehumanizing anonymity of the neoliberal world order breaks down right before our very eyes. Here at home, looting of the government has become so rampant and officially sanctioned that when President Trump does it in broad daylight, the American public barely bats an eyelash. Meanwhile, the decade has ended with the minimum wage set exactly where it was when the decade began. More and more of our people have sought to deaden the pain of existence through drugs or even suicide, and old hatreds and wild conspiracy theories have bubbled back to the surface. Left unchecked, the forces of chaos and animosity will only grow. The ginned-up fake immigration crisis exploited by Trump will become real as those in the global south are increasingly forced to flee climate violence and desperation. The next decades will see the U.S. become a majority-minority country, a seismic social shift that will make it even easier for cynical demagogues to pit black against white, man against woman, rural against urban, in a game of division by identity that only ever benefits those who grow fat and rich in the status quo. Against this backdrop, Trump may well just be a warm-up act, because Trump hasn't wielded the full power that he could have, not even remotely. He's too lazy, he's too short-sighted, and he's too easily manipulated. The most dangerous things that he has done isn't actually any executive order or piece of legislation or military action, although there is plenty, don't get me wrong, in the record that is cruel and abhorrent. The most dangerous thing he's done, though, is to demonstrate to other potential demagogues exactly what is possible. His biggest legacy will be how he exposed just how rotten and hollow our institutions are, how easy it would be with a few bold strokes to end up in a fundamentally different country. Now that the rot has been exposed, what happens next is critical, because to actually create a new system with a government that centers the working class, that bankruptcy and fragility actually did need to be revealed. Now, the fashionable, cynical question in Washington to ask candidates right now is, how will you accomplish anything? They're still living, though, in a legacy world of gridlock and constrained power. The real question is, where will you stop? How much power will you grab? On whose behalf will you wield it? Whose authority will you ultimately respect? The right answer for a populist isn't to look for a charismatic figure who will claim to act on behalf of the people, or, of course, only that leader is privy to what the real people really want. The right answer for a populist is to look for those who will distribute power broadly, who will expect to be held accountable by the people for how well or poorly they deliver material benefits, who don't single out different groups out for acclaim or contempt based on their identity. It's hard to believe that next new year we will know our next president. It will most likely be Trump again, or Biden, or Sanders. I almost wish the three of them could battle it out head-to-head for the future of the nation. Biden, of course, is the representative of the centrist establishment, holding fast this idea that if they just eliminated the coarse language from our discourse, they could all get back to their bipartisan commitment to wars, soft corruption, and steady grinding of the working class in the name of efficiency. Bernie, of course, is the representative of a left-wing populist movement that could answer Trump's right-wing reactionary government with something new, a Democratic Party that does not hold the working-class voters of the opposition in contempt. Or we could well be in for 4 more years of Trump's combination of psychological welfare for the white working class and actual welfare for the oligarchs. It's not like he's really improved the material interests of the white working class. Coal mines are still closing, wages are still low, the manufacturing sector is in a recession. Companies are forcing workers to retrain their foreign replacements. But it sure does feel good to watch your guy routinely humiliate all of the fancy people who look down their nose at you. Today, I'd have to say 4 more years of Trump is the most likely scenario. It's not a prediction, it's just a reality check. Michael Moore called this thing correctly last time around, and he's seeing much the same 4 years later.
The problem is that he will, if the vote were today, I believe he would win the electoral states that he would need. Because living out there, I will tell you, his level of support has not gone down 1 inch.
Remember, Trump will be much more difficult to beat this time around. He's got a real campaign this time. The wealthy, who feared he may actually tax them some small amount or hurt their portfolio with his trade war, have grown comfortable. Though he may offend their sensibilities, they've learned to live with it. This is the group, actually, Joe Biden is speaking to when he desperately assures them that nothing will fundamentally change under him. Don't worry, guys. The good times will keep rolling. I just won't call Rosie O'Donnell a dog from the White House Twitter account. You're still going to get all your treats. Forget about impeachment. Whatever way they find to allow it to weakly peter out is irrelevant. The election is the thing. That's why we cover it so relentlessly here, looking for clues as to which way this all could go, what the candidates and their mistakes and their language and their fundraising have to say about the state of the nation today, and what new thing may be born. Because the truth is, we're already living in a new reality. 2020 will be the year when the contours of that new order come into focus. So, Marshall, what do you think that 2020 is going to be all about? What do you think we're looking forward to?
I think 2020 is going to be all about, and I really like the way you set it up, as sort of three powerful forces battling against each other. The centrist establishment, the sort of populist right, and the populist left. I think it's going to be about those three forces battling it out. And I think what's so frustrating is it's actually absolutely unclear which one of these is going to dominate in the long term.
Right.
Because they each have like really fundamental weaknesses. I think if you're the centrist establishment, you really lack any ability to frankly navigate a lot of these problems you're talking about. They lack the ability to navigate. Yeah, they're in denial about the fact that the country's changing, whether it's sort of the racial demographics. If we were talking about the fact that you're looking at the coal mines closing, you can't just say learn to code as if that's something substantive. That's very hard for them. And then if you're looking at the populist left, I actually want to disagree a little bit about your point that it's cynical to ask how you're going to get things done. D.C. is not set up to get anything done right now. You know, we have an electoral college which doesn't respond to the popular vote, obviously.
Right.
We have a Senate which by design is actually created to make so that things cannot happen quickly. And then we have a legacy media that in of itself is like very entrenched into the old system. Not because they necessarily agree with everything, but because frankly, it's easier to understand. It's much easier to cover the story of impeachment with the sort of like day-to-day palace intrigue, like who's knifing who, which personality's on top, which is on bottom. That's easy for them. And then for the populist right, they in of themselves can literally not get anything done.
Right.
You know, anyone who supported Trump because they wanted to build the wall, they're not getting that done either. So lots of strengths from each of these perspectives, but lots of weaknesses too.
What I mean by that is this. If you imagine, and this is what I thought was going to happen when Trump got elected. I thought he was going to open up the purse strings. I thought he was going to do an infrastructure project in every district in the country. And then from there, he would have had Democrats would have had to have worked with him on it. They couldn't have resisted it. Are you kidding me? Money coming directly into their districts. They would have had to have worked with him on it. Then you're set up to have 60% approval rating. All the stuff that he wanted to the wall, the frickin' Muslim, all that stuff he could have done if he had started in a different way. It was all there for him, and he completely failed. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, in terms of, you know, what he's actually wanted to do, what he's actually asserted, I mean, they're just saying, no, we're not going to agree with subpoenas. No, we're going to just do whatever we want. I mean, all of these like norms and guardrails that I make fun of the Washington establishment for obsessing over all the time, he hasn't actually been checked on any of them. So if you are just willing to actually do a few things for the working class and get the people on your side, I really don't think there is any institution in Washington that could resist you. The other side of this is, imagine if Democrats, instead of fixating on their stupid impeachment argument, which is like the weakest possible case they could have made against this president, instead of leveraging all of their energy and resources there, what if they had put pressure on this administration to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour? What if the protests in the street, what if the endless media coverage had been around that thing, or around union rights, or around anything that would actually deliver material benefits? There's no way that this administration could have resisted. So that's what I mean when I say, you know, we have a fiction that this town is just gridlock and nothing can get done, et cetera, et cetera. But you look at Bernie Sanders, he calls out Amazon, next thing you know, $15 minimum wage. You look at the way that this president has just been able to steamroll over certain things during his administration that were considered, you know, absolutely no way before. There's just no strength left in any of these institutions to actually constrain anyone who was serious about grabbing power. All right, next on Rising. Andrew Yang raised $16.5 million in Q4.
His South Carolina campaign chair, Jermaine Johnson, tells us that a major cash influx will help his outreach in the Palmetto State.